Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the EEARSS Podcast produced by Terrier TV here at Titusville High School. I am Frank. That is Cindy. That is Bill. How goes it, guys? This is the first time, I think, second time today, but first time all year where we all showed up and have different color shirts on.
I know. For once,
That's
Bill
true.
knew for certain we wouldn't match because I don't own yellow.
That's because you don't own yellow.
You don't own yellow?
I own one article of clothing that is yellow. It is the dress I bought for trivia so I could dress up as Jane from Tarzan.
Okay.
That is the only yellow I own.
Is that on purpose?
I just don't look good in yellow.
She doesn't. Yeah. I have a student in one of my classes that he's a redhead and he's got a green sweatshirt. And I keep telling him he needs to burn it. Burn that sweatshirt, dude. It makes you look sickly. You know,
no, we love green.
No,
wow.
This particular
This
shade
took a
of
turn.
green does not look good on him. He wears blue. He looks wonderful.
Yes.
Looks healthy. Wears his green. It's like, are you okay, dude?
It's a
Are you
terrible
sick?
hoodie.
Really?
It's really bad.
See,
he
it
does
is.
look sickly.
Okay,
Yes.
are we talking like emerald green or are
It's
we
like
talking lime green?
It's like
Kinda like
olive
olive
mixed
drab.
with like baby puke green.
Okay,
It's not a good green. It's
but
not a good
a good emerald green on a redhead.
But
That's
Frank,
It
you
was
got to
not
be
emerald
careful about the colors you wear because different colors accentuate.
Mhm.
I know you're just trying to blend in. You want to blend into the background. You're all about the camo and all of that.
This doesn't blend
I
in,
know
does it?
that's no. That's not what I'm talking about. But
How often do I wear camo here, Bill? Maybe once a season?
didn't you the other day? Didn't you have an undershirt on that was camo?
No, sir.
The
I don't
sleeves
have any
were camo?
undershirts. I don't have any shirts that
You
are
didn't?
camo.
Don't you
Okay.
often wear pants that
When I'm doing the field research, sometimes I'll wear camo pants because they have the extra knee sewed in.
And
So you don't tear the
alligators
knees
can't
up?
See his legs.
Oh my
They
garage.
don't know he's
Oh
coming.
The
my
alligators
goodness
are like,
gracious.
what is this floating torso? What could it be?
What in the world is happening right now? Look, there's a floating beard. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
there you go. What's this beard? Let's go investigate. And
Good
then they go
Lord.
closer.
Are you guys ready to talk
You're
to our
just
guest?
so clever.
I don't. How does this always get turned on me? I have no idea what's happening right now.
Thank you for having us here, Frank.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you guys for having me here.
We're so happy to be here.
Are you guys ready to chat with our guest?
Yes, I am.
I'm very excited about this. So today on the podcast, we are blessed to be joined by Greg Lepera. Greg, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, as I was telling you before we started the podcast, we can't cover crocodilians and crocodilian experts and people that are really digging into the crocodilian world without having a conversation with you. It's not fair, Greg. It's not fair.
Well, thank you for that sentiment. I appreciate that too.
So tell us a little bit about you and kind of a little bit about your journey, just where you grew up, and take us through all the things, Greg.
Oh gosh, I'm a native of a little town outside of Philadelphia, but my dad worked for a paper company, and he was transferred every few years. So I only lived in that area. That's my dad's. So I was 3.5, and at that point we moved to North Carolina. Before that, I was a fan of the zoo. I have a lot of memories from being very young. I remember my first birthday. I remember things that happened between that time and the time that we left, 3.5 or so. I remember my cousin being born. I think I was 2 at that time. So I didn't realize that wasn't a thing until I started talking to other people about early memories. And, they would often say stuff like, well, heck, I don't remember anything till I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and that kind of surprised me. But the reason I'm telling you this is that one of my very earliest memories is standing up in a carriage at the Philadelphia Zoo, and at the time, Roger Conant was running the zoo, and coming face to face behind glass, of course, with a gaboon viper. And looking at that gaboon viper and seeing, even though they don't have much eye movement, they've got a little tiny bit of eye movement. And I remember that eye turning just slightly and looking at me as a child. And it gave me a fascination with those animals. It made me understand that, there's something going on there. Even as a child, I think, when something makes eye contact with you, to me, that's there's some kind of presence there. And so we moved to North Carolina, and the day that we moved into, my dad rented a little place for like 6 months, and I was 3.5. The day we moved in, the neighbor came across the street and said, I saw a copperhead cross the road and go into your yard. You be careful with your son, because that copperhead's there. I tried to go get a shovel and find it, and we weren't able to find it. So that copperhead's still around. Well, I knew what a copperhead was. I'd seen them at the zoo, and this was back in a time when you could wander around and as a child and play in the yard and nobody cared, and I began to look for that snake, and I found it after a while. I don't know how long it was, but it was probably a week or two, but I found a copperhead. And 3.5 years old, looked for it and found it. And that was a real key moment for me in how I progressed. I was at that point, I was fascinated with snakes. And I found it at the neighbor's house, and he came outside and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking at that copperhead. And he went and got a shovel and killed it.
Wow.
And I couldn't understand that, because I was watching the snake. It didn't do anything to me. It just was crawling around. It was minding its own business. It had gone up next to the house, and I'd been watching it a while. And then he told me all this stuff. Oh, they'll chase you. They'll do this. They'll do that. It's gonna move until the sun goes down. They can't die until the sun goes down. And of course,
I've never heard that one.
Looking at the dead snake, and it was dead within a short amount of time. It stopped moving. It wasn't. And of course, there was a little bit of movement for a while, but it stopped after a very short time. So, at that point, I kept thinking, well, adults don't know anything about snakes. So,
this is true. Yeah.
And my dad was, maybe not encouraging, but understanding, and he gave me some field guides. And a few years later, he subscribed me to some of the journals. I read those journals. They were very different back then. They were understandable. Now there's a lot of mathematical formulas and all kinds of stuff in the journals. But back then it was like, hey, we found this neat animal and here's what it looks like. So there wasn't quite the heavy duty science back then in a lot of the journals that you see now. So I as a kid, I pored over those things. And I think it really helped direct my career path.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. It's funny. I've never heard about a copperhead not being able to die till sunset. That's a new one to me. I've heard a lot of goofy stories, but that's a new one to me. But tell us a little bit about where your path went from there as a child. What really drew you to your eventual career? I know you've done so much throughout your career, but what eventually drew you from that spot into crocodilians and wildlife in general?
Well, I started keeping reptiles at home, and I've had snakes in the house since I was 4.5 or 5 years old.
Wow. Back
to that understanding mother and father, maybe not so excited about it, but hey, it's not hurting anything. So I kept animals. I started working on a library. I had a lot of books as a kid. I would save up money. My mom and dad didn't even know this, but there was a book by Alan Levitin, Reptiles and Amphibians of the United States. And I saw it as a brand new copy in a bookstore. I was probably in, I don't know, 3rd grade, I guess. And I saved up my money, and I went in there, and I was paying the guy a few dollars at a time till I paid off that book. And I came home with it. Like, where did you get that? I'm like, I've been paying for it for months.
How cool is that?
And so, anyway, I still have that book here. It's in my library. As a matter of fact, I can see it from here. I'm sitting here. I'm looking at it. Anyway, so it developed a lifelong fascination. I don't want to call it an obsession, because I have a lot of things I'm interested in, but it definitely was a very strong long-term interest. I ended up going to school for scene design, for theater and illustration. And I quickly realized that was not my cup of tea. I mean, they were really late nights and a lot of people who did drugs, and it was not something I felt like I wanted to pursue. And I was still in school, and my parents moved to St. Augustine. My cousin was a long-term St. Augustine resident, and I started coming to St. Augustine in 1970 to visit my cousin. And my parents and I would drive down when I was a kid. And I decided to go in to the Alligator Farm, and was chatting with a fellow named Mark Wise. I don't know if you ever met Mark. He was I guess they called him General general manager back. He eventually became the same position, but they changed it to director at some point.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard the name.
And so Mark and I kind of hit it off and chatted about snakes quite a bit, and he offered me a job, and I couldn't turn it down. And that led to 25 years or so in the zoo industry, and meeting a lot of people and doing a lot of cool things.
I hear about people all the time that are looking to jump into that. Tell us where you started at there and kind of how it changed along the way, and how you went about it.
So there was a fellow who was getting ready to leave, and they knew he was leaving, and they asked me to come on and do some, come in, kind of do like half, reptile stuff and half maintenance stuff until that fellow left, and I'd have a full-time reptile showman keeper position. They didn't really have a title for it back then. We just did shows, and we did 5 reptile, snake shows a day. We did 4 or 5 alligator shows a day, depending on the time of the year. Multiple feeding shows a day. And then in between that, we, took care of animals. We had, I think, 5 species of crocodilians back then, and there was a small snake exhibit that Ross Allen had been involved with. And I met Ross several times there. He was there for a few years. After he left Silver Springs, they built a theater for him, and I got to meet him a couple times and talk to him. I didn't know him as well as I would have liked, but it was always fun to see him and chat, and he was always very kind and helpful. Always had some encouragement. So that's kind of what happened there. When Offenberg was doing some work there and brought in Kent Vliet, and they started doing work there with Kent's PhD dissertation for alligator behavior there. And so there was kind of this, a mentality that changed from the old roadside zoo attraction to something a little more serious. And, and about that time, National Geographic started showing up, and Kent did work with them, and they did the realm of the alligator stuff. You probably talked about that somewhat with him when he was here.
Yes, sir. Yep, sure did.
And so that was a bit of a change in philosophy there. And, with it, and those wildlife films that became very popular. I don't know if Kent told you this, but Realm of the Alligator was at one point their highest rated show ever. And so we started getting a lot of people who were there because of those shows, that wanted to see the place. And so that, and I think it was soon after that the Discovery Channel came on, and so a lot of people were beginning to see those kind of wildlife shows and beginning a new appreciation for animals, versus, they want to see that guy stick his hand in the alligator's mouth and put his head in there. And so that really helped. And about the same time, the Bronx Zoo was beginning to have some growing pains in that they had produced a lot of young crocodilians up there, and they were running out of space. The building there is a finite space, and crocs take up a lot of room. And so they were beginning to look for southern facilities that they could mentor to be able to house some of their growing baby crocodilian collection. And we became involved with Peter Bursitis from the Bronx, who was the supervisor of herpetology up there at the time, and then John Baylor became quite a mentor to us, and they encouraged us to get ready for and apply for AZA accreditation, which we did about 1987. I think it was 1987. And so their involvement really began to raise the standards and the bar for us. And, we tried to, do the best we could to do better by the animals and have better enclosures. And, and it just grew from there, and once we were accredited, and we hosted the very first Back then it was AAZPA, American Association of Zoos and Aquariums. Now, zoological parks and aquariums. Now it's AZA, American Zoo and Aquarium Association. Anyway, we started meeting zoo professionals from across the country, and we hosted the very first Croc Advisory Group meeting there at the farm. And, we met some really fantastic folks doing that had really advanced husbandry over the course of their involvement in zoos, and, created a lot of the early ability to have animals reproduce in captivity, because back in the 60s and 70s it was rare to produce reptiles in captivity, and a lot of these folks were real cutting edge folks, and a lot of those techniques eventually made their way into the private sector with herpetoculture, and some of the people actually made it into herpetoculture as well and started businesses raising captive bred reptiles and amphibians. So it was a neat time to be involved in the place back then. And we started working with all these zoos and begin to collect other crocodilian species. And that was a conversation Mark Wise and I had, and something that he and Ross Allen had discussed when Ross was there. Ross at one point had all recognized living species of crocodilians at Silver Springs, and Mark thought it would be an amazing thing to do that again, and a real tribute to Ross to be able to do that again. And so we had that as a goal, and began to collect animals and bring different species in, and it was an exciting time. It really was.
So there's this famous photo. It happens to be up next to your photo right now on your graphic on the screen here in front of us, that has you feeding this crocodile named Sobek. Tell us a little bit about that crocodile, and you were the person with that crocodile, I believe, when it first got there. That was you, right?
That was me there with him, yes. And that was Gomek.
Gomek. Okay.
So Sobek was the big crocodile that I think they got him from Everglades Wonder Gardens and brought him to Silver Springs after we brought Gomek in.
Yes,
and
that's right.
Sobek was, according to my sources, like just shy of 14 feet.
Right.
Gomek was 17.9. And we were approached years ago by a local media outlet that asked us to kind of do a Sobek versus Gomek story. And, my boss, Mark, said, Sobek, so what? Because he was an impressive croc, but he wasn't Gomek impressive. Now, Gomek came from the Fly River. He was captured by George Craig back in the 70s, moved to Australia, to George's facility there in northeast Australia. And eventually he caught the attention of the Nautilus machine inventor, Arthur Jones. And Arthur wanted to have a big croc collection. So he was collecting crocs and collecting snakes. He had massive numbers of snakes. Did you ever visit that?
He had a bunch of elephants,
Did you ever see
too,
that facility
didn't he?
in Ocala?
He had elephants too, didn't he?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Didn't he have elephants?
He brought in 80 elephants.
Yeah.
Holy moly. No, I never heard of that place. I've never heard of it.
It was called Jumbo Lair, and it was in Ocala. And he had a big at one time it was the second longest runway in Florida for his planes. He had several planes. Yeah. The only runway longer was the one where they landed the space shuttle here periodically.
Okay.
And so he had a very young wife at the time, and he trained her to fly, and she at one point broke Chuck Yeager's cross-country prop jet flight record, flying from like San Diego to Jacksonville or something like that. But she broke Chuck's old record, which was interesting.
Huh.
So anyway, Arthur was, a multi-millionaire, would have been multi-billionaire today by today's standards. And a lot of that money came from his inventing of these Nautilus bodybuilding machines. And, he did that at a time when interest in health was burgeoning, and a lot of places had, their local gyms began to bring in people besides bodybuilders, just people interested in health. And he sold Nautilus machines to all of these gyms across the country and just made a killing. But he was one of the, if not the original, TV animal show hosts. He ran a show called Wild Cargo that ran for a couple seasons, and this was a precursor to Wild Kingdom. I've seen some old copies of it. It was a bad show. The production values were not that great. So anyway, he wanted to have crocs. He liked crocs, and he wanted elephants, and he had some of the biggest rattlesnakes you've ever seen. He was trying to get a 7-foot rattlesnake, and he had some animals that were like within a couple inches of 7 feet. And some of those animals were like 28 pounds. I mean, they were obese.
Good Lord.
It was an amazing thing to see. Not the best for the health of those animals, but those were some giant rattlesnakes. Nothing ever will come that close again, I'm sure. Anyway, he bought the California Alligator Farm, which was across the street from Knott's Berry Farm, and they closed it down and they moved all those crocs to Ocala. And that made up the basis for that facility there. And the highlight of that collection was his purchase of Gomek and moving Gomek from Australia to Florida. And, as he got a little older, I think it became quite clear that, it was something just to pour money into. And, I think he was ready to get rid of it. And the Alligator Farm purchased Gomek and purchased that facility there. And we created an exhibit for Gomek and moved him to St. Augustine. That was an interesting move. He was pulled out of his enclosure with a come-along, placed on a cargo net, wrapped in a cargo net, placed on a rubberized Dacron whale sling that we purchased and made just for him, lifted that thing up into a horse trailer, drove him to St. Augustine, weighed him on government scales so we could get a weight. He was right at 1,700 pounds at the time. Got a pretty accurate measurement off of him when he was secured in there. He was 17.5 at the time. Brought him to St. Augustine, lifted that whole thing up, that whale sling, and dropped him into that exhibit. And we fed him right away, and he ate immediately. So he wasn't too stressed out by the whole thing. And he was there up until his passing in 1997. But he was an amazing animal. The last time I measured him was 94, and he was 17.9. And I got a really, I think, very accurate measurement, straight line measurement of him. And when they measured him when he died, he was 17.9.5. So
okay,
like a quarter of an inch difference from my number.
Wow. It's a very large crocodile.
Yeah, I think so.
He was heavy. At one time, Arthur, he wanted everything big and heavy, was feeding him 100 pounds of nutria every 3 days.
Yikes.
So he was heavy. We cut that food way back when we brought him to St. Augustine, but he was still very heavy. We tried to get him to exercise a little bit by making him come up out of the water for food. We would stand in front. He was a very calm animal. Kenny would hand feed him, and Kenny would take Kenny Ernest, whose father owned the California Alligator Farm. And Kenny eventually owned it and moved with the crocodile collection that Arthur Jones bought and brought here. Kenny moved with the collection, and Kenny grew up with those animals. He was born there and grew up with a lot of those animals. So he knew that croc collection intimately, and he was really good with crocs. He just retired recently. He eventually moved up to Black Hills Reptile Gardens, where he retired a few years ago.
Okay, well that's interesting. Now I know this has been your life too. I mean, this has been, you just talked about from 3.5 years old to now. I know at this point you do a lot of teaching also. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I've made a lot of friends through Croc School. So we hosted an organizational meeting when I was at Jacksonville Zoo through the Croc Advisory Group, we had talked about creating a school to teach zoo professionals about how to manage crocodiles in captivity. There have been a couple high-profile deaths of very valuable animals at a couple zoos, and what we were seeing was that a lot of zoos were moving to a zoogeographic model, where instead of having a dedicated reptile building where reptile keepers kept everything, we were seeing a lot of things like aviaries that also had tortoises and had a crocodile exhibit, and you might have a bird keeper taking care of a false gharial, for instance. And so we realized that there was a loss of expertise to some extent in this new model that a lot of zoos were using, and we wanted to address that. And so I think we've been very successful. We had that organizational meeting in, I believe it was in 2000. We started the school. We wrote, all of us distributed and wrote chapters for it. We now have like a 700-page monograph. If you haven't seen it, you should take a look at it next time you're at the farm. They're in the library there off the education building.
Okay.
But it's a great big monograph, and all the students get this monograph. We do right now it's a 9-day course, and it's intensive. We've had, since 2000, we've done 23 courses. We only lost a few to COVID, so we would be at 26 this year, would have been the 26, but we're actually 23 because of COVID. And we've had over 500 students. So a lot of those folks have been my friends. I have students from the very first course that I'm still in touch with. And so we teach that. I'm one of 5 people that have been teaching that course every year that we've offered.
Now, I know
Kent, your last guest was one of the other ones.
That's very neat. I know with a long career like you've had, you've been able to be a mentor to a lot of people. I've met some of these people that that have told me that you've mentored them. If there's somebody young and upcoming, let's say they're in high school, early college, and they're wanting to eventually get to the point of working with crocodilians, maybe with reptiles in general, whatever that might be, what's some advice you'd give to them of ways to approach their career, and just all the aspects of it?
It depends on what they're looking to do. If they like zoos, if they like working with captive animals like that, that's very different than doing field work or something like that. So let's address that, because that really is what I've done. It's hard to have a long-term career in zoos. It's gotten a lot better, but zoos historically have not paid as well. And I think, part of that is that, there's almost an endless supply of people who want those jobs. And so when I was still actively hiring folks, it wouldn't be unusual for us, for an open animal keeper position, to get, hundreds of applications for one job. And so it's difficult to weed out those folks that don't have any experience. And what we'd often end up finding is that we would hire folks who had some level of primary education. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
A call here. Let me dump it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyway, some primary. Oh God, he's calling me again. Sorry, it's my business partner, and I'm not going to answer it.
Yikes.
So anyway, he'll understand. So we would often find people who had a degree in biology and no practical experience, or people with practical experience and no degree or no formal education. And it was a rare thing to find people who had both. And so I think that that's important. And I think that, having that formal education to be able to get your foot in the door and say, hey, I'm serious about this. I spent 4 years doing this, and also, hey, you know what? I spent 2 years volunteering at my local zoo because I'm so interested. I devoted my free time to do that. So that's a way to get practical experiences, to volunteer. A lot of larger zoos have pretty well established means of getting your foot in the door and doing some volunteer work. And it varies considerably from facility to facility, but most people are happy to have that. And if you've got a real sincere interest, I think that really shows. So if you've got practical experience, you've got hands-on experience, if you're genuinely, deeply committed and interested in animals and animal husbandry and those sorts of things, that I think that can show really well in an interview, and certainly would help to distinguish someone who's looking for a job like that.
Well, Greg,
Makes sense.
That you've had an amazing career. I know that continues with all the stuff you're still doing, and I can't say thank you enough for taking the time to chat with us and just dig into your story a little bit. I know we could sit here and talk for the next 3 hours and still not even barely touch all the incredible things you've done, but man, I appreciate you. And just thankful for you to take the time.
Well, I'm really happy to be able to chat, and someday we're going to sit down for that 3-hour chat.
Dear Lord, buddy, I sure hope so. It's overdue for a long time. It seems like every time we see each other, we're both. It's like an in between, real quick, like a hey, how you doing? And we go back. We go back about our own ways,
It's always one of those problems with those get-togethers, the Croc Fests and things like that. There are so many people there. You've got 2 minutes with any one person, and really, you could spend all day with any one of them.
It's true. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's very true. Well, we appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much for taking the time. And
thanks for having me. Hopefully, I didn't bore you to death.
You did not. We'll catch up here soon, and we'll dig into it some more.
All right, sounds like a plan.
Right.
Thank
Appreciate you, Greg. Thank you, buddy. Have a good evening.
All right.
All right. So
Cut him
bye.
off. That's not good.
He was still on.
I know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry. The guy's done so much. He's done so much in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Uncle Bill talks about him quite often because he was a member of the Central Florida Herpetological Society, which Uncle Bill was part of, and they would see each other there all the time. And
Okay.
yeah, it's the guy's a legend. I feel like I use that a lot, but the guests we have on legitimately are.
You know a lot of phenomenal people.
Yep, that's definitely one of them. All right, guys. Well, I mean, that was our last episode for the year.
Yeah.
Is that crazy or what?
Well,
Yes.
It's kind of the way time works,
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Indeed.
Are you guys coming to EcoFest?
Of course.
I'll be there.
Okay. I know somebody who's getting an award at EcoFest.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
She might be on the oh, wait a second, she's here right now.
Oh, well, there we go.
Yep. So I told you about this last week.
You did.
Because I just the more you talked about being put in the spot, I was like, oh Lord, I gotta have I went and talked to Bill. I'm like, I should tell her, shouldn't I? And he's like, yeah. I said, okay, all right.
Thank you for being the voice of reason.
Yes.
The voice of reason.
You're very welcome.
He tells me after. He told my husband this weeks ago.
I did.
That man was going to die with that secret.
Oh, wow.
There is
That's
loyalty,
good to
but
know.
it's not to
That's
me.
good to
Yeah.
know.
Oh,
He said nothing.
I said, hey, I want to surprise Cindy with this. And then it was the way that podcast went, and Cindy kept talking about how terrified things like that make her.
Right.
I was like, I didn't realize it was that bad. Like, I can't. I was talking to Stephanie about
He
it.
thought
I'm
he
like,
was doing a kindness.
I did, honestly. I was talking to Stephanie about it, and I was like, I got to tell her. I'm like, I have to tell her. I can't do this to her.
I kept trying to figure out why your face looked distressed. And I was
Like, the more you
what's
talked about it, I was
what's
like-
happening here?
And I was like, oh, this isn't good.
I had no idea I was
I think-
saving myself.
I think there's been an
Well, you
error.
did.
Yes.
You did.
You did. Otherwise, I was gonna be like, and Cindy, is Cindy here? Cindy, hey,
you,
come up here,
you
Cindy.
wouldn't have found me. I would have bolted. You would have seen dust behind me.
I would have had Stephanie or somebody standing beside you to make sure you didn't escape.
That Barbie that had the rollerblades that shot sparks, that's what I would have looked like.
Just gone.
Scooting on out of there.
Yeah.
So, this is the last episode of the season. This will also be the last episode that I'm here to help with.
You're
That's
graduating.
right.
Graduating?
I am
Graduating.
graduating.
Well, congratulations on that.
She's
Yeah.
off to FAU.
You're going to FAU?
I am.
That's where my
Yes.
daughter's at.
Ocean engineering.
That is amazing. I am so excited for you. It is
Yeah.
such a beautiful campus.
I've seen it. Went and toured it like twice now.
That's awesome.
Did you guys ever find the owls?
I still have not seen any owls, but I did get to see I have now forgotten what it's called, but it's basically their ocean science research facility.
I don't know
That's
the name
at
of
Which
it.
I
Cumberland.
understand is incredible.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm so excited for you.
Moving in this summer.
That's awesome. Do you know what dorm?
So it's like a summer bridge program. So we're
That's
going to be in like these
awesome.
apartments at first, and then in the fall I'll have a different housing assignments, but I have met my roommates and they're very nice.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so excited for you.
Wow. Big step. Big stuff. I like
Yes.
it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Let's wrap up the season.
Let's do it.
All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in to the EEARSS podcast produced by Terrier TV here at Titusville High School. If you'd like to learn more about EEARSS, you can go over to EEARSS.org or .com or AlligatorRobb.com. Again, they all take you to the same place. And if you have not heard about EEARSS the Environment Eco Fest, which may or may not have happened last weekend, depends on when I post this, come down there, Cocoa Village, May 23rd. Enjoy the event. It's free. It's meant to highlight all these incredible organizations that'll be there, not just us. Although it is a fundraiser for us, it's meant to highlight everybody. Come there, enjoy it, soak it up, have some fun. And while we won't catch you next week, we'll catch you pretty soon. We'll see you all then. Bye-bye.